about a revolution. We started a movement. We've increased turnout. The turnout's turned out for us.
Joe Biden clearly talking about Bernie Sanders without mentioning him by name. Now, for his part, Sanders is running a new spot trying to tie himself to, believe it or not, Biden's old boss, Barack Obama. This ad now running in Florida.
Bernie is somebody who has the virtue of saying exactly what he believes, great authenticity, great passion, and is fearless. Bernie served on the Veterans Committee and got bills done.
I think people are ready for a call to action. They want honest leadership who cares about them. They want somebody who's going to fight for them. And they will find it in Bernie. That's right, feel the burn.
I'm Bernie Sanders, and I approve this message.
I find it very curious here. The same day that Bernie Sanders is talking about running against the establishment and obviously overturning the Affordable Care Act, he's now tying himself to the president. We'll see how that spot plays out. Now, before I get to my next guest, I wanted to show you what we learned, not just obviously who won, as we went over in last segment here with the delegates, but what the exit polls showed us last night. Voters in just about every state that had exit polls said that a nominee who can defeat Trump is the most important factor. It's more important than whether or not they agree with them on the issues. It is who is the most electable. But when it comes to the issues, exit polls by CBS show that healthcare is number one, followed by climate change, race relations, then income inequality. Now, let's take a closer look at the coalition that fueled Biden's victory. Biden, he won the black vote in every state, but Sanders took the Latino vote in the vast majority of the states. In Virginia and North Carolina, Biden, he won both groups, and that's where he won really big. Biden also won the majority of votes from white college-educated women in every state except 3, and the former Veep was also helped tremendously by late deciders who voted after his huge win in South Carolina. He took the largest share of those people in nearly every state. Let's bring in our next guest, Mark Mellman. He's a political consultant and pollster. What do you think when the final postscript is written out of this, Mark, in that how much was it Clyburn's endorsement when he was most vulnerable, or how much was it, the lineup of people standing next to him on Sunday as they all seem to be rallying around the establishment, if you will? When they look back, what does Biden say down deep saved this campaign for him?
Well, in the first instance, I think you have to say it was Biden's own ability to win in South Carolina. He was doing quite well there. There's no question that Jim Clyburn's endorsement helped him a great deal more, produced that big margin, and it was that big margin that in turn led to all those folks dropping out and endorsing Biden. So it's really a chain of events that were all linked together. Hard to separate them out. But the reality is when you have all these people, all these former opponents getting behind him and saying this is the guy that we think should be president, none of them are going with Sanders, it creates the impression, the reality, that Sanders is a divisive character and that Biden's the one who can really get the job done, really beat Donald Trump, as you said, the most important consideration for Democrats.
And listen, I think it was the best case scenario for Democrats last night. That said, though, if you think about it, Mark, it wasn't what Biden did. You had Clyburn, who even in endorsing him, did it with a caveat that he needed to upturn his campaign, that it was being run terribly. The people who went to the stage, it wasn't that they were moved by the words of Biden necessarily or his performances in debates or anywhere else. It was they saw the timing, they saw Super Tuesday, they saw they didn't have a pathway, and he was the best option. At some point, and I like the guy, but Joe Biden's got to earn it on his own. He's going to have moments coming forward, whether it be on the debate stage or somewhere else, where he can't keep having these missteps where people wonder if he's lost his fastball.
There's no question you're right. The fact is that Biden, I think, has impressed a lot of people over a lot of years. He is a very well-liked candidate among Democrats, always has been. People did have some doubts about him. Those doubts got resolved in various ways for various reasons, but he can't bring those doubts back to the fore. There's no question about that. This is going to be a competitive race for a while yet. Earlier on, one of your guests was suggesting that the race is essentially over. I don't think that's really true. I think there's a race yet to be run, yet to be battled, yet to be waged, and it's not clear 100% clear who's going to win. No question Biden has a big advantage, but the race isn't over yet. And Biden does have to prevent himself from incurring and inflaming those doubts that people had. But look, he gave a great speech after South Carolina. He gave a great speech last night. And I think he's finding his voice. He's communicating well. And that's really what he has to do going forward.
Mark, if you're Bloomberg right now, you still want to have a role here. Election law is a little complicated. You can't just give your entire field operation and staff and just turn it over. What role do you think he'll play? And if you're Biden, what do you want help and in what form from Bloomberg?
Well, the reality is, as Rick Klein was saying, the reality is the campaigns cannot coordinate. That is, Bloomberg and Biden can't coordinate. But Bloomberg can essentially make his staff into a staff that's working on behalf of Joe Biden. He said that he's going to continue that effort to unseat Trump. He's paying people through the end of the year, so they have people ready to go, ready to work. My guess is, and it's only a guess, but my guess is those people will soon be working to help Joe Biden according to a plan that Bloomberg and his folks draw up as opposed to a plan that Biden draws up. But they'll be aiming toward the same objective, and that's what counts. The reality is Biden hasn't raised a lot of money so far, not as much as Sanders, for example. Bloomberg has all there is. And so he has a field staff, over 2,000 people in his employ working on this campaign that can be working on behalf of Joe Biden. He can fund advertisements on behalf of Joe Biden. All that is perfectly legal, perfectly appropriate, and I assume that we're going to see him do that.
We played the spot, the latest Sanders spot, which is, in my view, misleading at best in terms of the Obama-Sanders love affair. To that end, I know President Obama would love to stay out of this until Milwaukee. Do you think he will? Do you think he should, given that, Bernie Sanders would obviously like to undo the greatest legislative accomplishment that he has to his record? We already know that he apparently made some phone calls behind the scenes, giving some advice at least to the Buttigiegs and the rest of the world. Where do you see the Obama's role from here out?
Well, President Obama is going to decide to do what he wants when he wants. He doesn't need my advice. But what I think the role that President Obama wants to play is as the unifier. And that role as unifier will emerge once it's clear who the nominee is. And as I said, I think it's not yet clear who the nominee is going to be. But once that's clear, I think you'll see President Obama trying to bring folks together, the various parts of the party together, to make sure that we're focused on defeating Donald Trump in November. I do think I agree with you 100%. I think the ad that you showed is terribly misleading, and I think that cuts right at the core of Bernie Sanders' appeal. As you were saying, he's somebody who's seen as authentic, somebody who's seen as straightforward and honest. Even President Obama, I think, says he's an honest guy, says what he really thinks. But this ad is so misleading because Obama hasn't endorsed him for president, and it makes it sound like he's endorsed Sanders for president, which is, of course, completely untrue. So it's an ad that I think is going to hurt him. But I think President Obama is going to keep his powder dry until it's clear who the nominee is going to be, and he's going to try and unite the party around that nominee.
Your old friend James Carville suggested that people behind the scenes are pushing Sanders to pack it in sooner than later for the betterment of the party to come together. It sounds to me at least a little bit like wishful thinking. That said, Warren and Sanders, do you see a scenario where we don't go to Milwaukee, where this thing is still going to be contested in some way, shape, or form?
I think it's quite possible that we do go to Milwaukee without the convention being really contested. Depends on how well Joe Biden does coming up. But, look at these states. They're like you were mentioning, Florida, Ohio, Michigan, important states that have large delegations. Demographically, they are the kind of voters that Biden has appealed to so far. They have Democratic leaders, at least in two of them, Ohio and Michigan, and of course Illinois, Democratic leaders who are likely to endorse Biden, give him that seal of approval. So I think Biden has an excellent chance of winning this nomination and making it clear that he's got it won before Milwaukee.
Interesting. Mark, I appreciate the time as always. Thank you so much.
You appreciate it.
All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to move away from politics and turn to the law. Our legal panel is here to take a look at several stories, including the coronavirus and how it could spur not only, obviously, health concerns, but also a wave of lawsuits.